Okay, I made a video this last weekend. Things in this country have gotten pretty interesting, put it to you that way. And when I made that video and talked about all these different things, there's a lot of things happening, a lot of things going on, both globally and inside the United States. And I mentioned something about a civil war. Okay. Civil war, or just an attack on this country to destroy it as a whole. All right. I don't know what you can call it, but the reason everyone's brought up the Civil War thing and that is because a lot of the circumstances that created that war back in the 1860s, there's a lot of very similar things going on. Okay, and what has happened to this country, and it's a very complex situation. See, that's why it's difficult for me to just make a short video focusing on a generalized point, because it's very complex. What's going on in this country now started way back in the late 80s and the 90s, and has been a progression, both with several things going on, the economy being one of them, the debt, illegal immigrations, all these importing stuff and sending our jobs outside of the country, and just a lot of things have accumulated and gotten us to a point which is pretty, say, unnerving where we've arrived. Now, like I said, Civil War. It's kind of like a lot of the circumstances from the first Civil War are there. It revolves around economies in different parts of this country and cheap labor. Now, we had an administration that had open borders. The government and someone paid a lot of money to bring these people in, process them, and distribute them throughout the whole country, unchecked. Okay? And you have these sanctuary cities and all this other stuff, and we're divided into red and blue states, and there is socially, politically, a huge divide in this country. Now, we all know the reasons why. We all know that the illegal immigration and unchecked immigration was to provide a cheap labor force. Okay? As our manufacturing and industrial power has diminished, and we import more stuff than we do manufacture it. And just like, I think if you ever watched Victor David Hanson, like he said, the policies of the last administration and what was going on is exactly what you do to destroy a country. Dissolve the borders, allow anyone to come in, promote lawlessness, okay, to where nothing's illegal, or your police forces, short of murder, don't arrest anyone or go to crime scenes or stop vandalism, petty theft, all these things. It's a system to destroy this country. There are people out to destroy the United States of America completely. Okay? And a lot of them are elected officials, backed by very wealthy people who are the ones that actually control a lot of things. They control the politicians, they control, the banks, your money, all that. So, what I'm seeing now, we elected Trump, and Trump was supposed to come and turn all this around. Now, granted, he has started doing this, okay? But here's the problem. The amount of corruption and illegal activity that has been perpetrated by this government Okay, it's embedded into the functioning of the everyday running of a lot of places. Okay, and look at all of them: Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco, okay, Seattle, uh, Portland. Now they got Chicago. New York City is, I don't know. New York City is New York City and it's its own thing, but it ain't good there. Okay, and several other major places or these sanctuary cities. Now, when Trump goes in there and starts deporting, and it's kind of not like he's got roadblocks set up and somebody don't speak English, they're taking them off to a camp and deporting them. A lot of these people, I believe, already are on the radar. They have criminal offenses. Okay, they've been arrested for things. They know, they've committed crimes. They're on record, and they're deporting them. Okay, they like to portray it that it's this police state where people are stopped in the street and dragged away out of their homes, and that's not what's going on. But when we have these protests, this No King Day, okay, where there's a division is there are people who, no matter what Trump does, they're against him. He had a parade. It was his birthday. So they're against this. He's doing this. They're against it. They get emotional and crazy about this. Okay. I quite didn't like what went on for years, but I didn't get emotional, crazy, protest, or do any of this stuff. And what I'm seeing is a trend. These people that are out there, excuse me, had to get a drink of water. These people that are out there with these protests, it's somewhat like the LA. We'll look at that one. The way that started, it was a peaceful protest. There was about 60 people or something like that showed up outside the ICE thing. Then all of a sudden these people show up, start breaking the curbs up, pulling signs, getting stuff, and then they start rioting. Okay. So realistically, which probably started off as peaceful protests, escalated out of control. Then you have these governors, mayors, and of course they control the police force and tell these people, if you want your job, you're going to do what we tell you, and allow all this to escalate. Okay. Now, while the politicians supporting this, and there's been several things where, they're saying, well, there was peaceful protest, blah, blah, it's in our rights, and which it is. And then while that person's saying this, they got another camera running where they're burning cars in the street, flinging concrete off of overpasses on the highway, smashing police cars. And then the protesters themselves, okay? One guy kind of went around and was like talking to him and go, do you believe, what are you out here for? What's the reason you're protesting ICE? What's the reason you're protesting? What are your goals? And they said to tear down the system, to overturn it all, to rip it down. He goes, and if you don't like the U.S., what are you going to replace it with? Or what are you looking to get rid of the said government as it is and replace it with what? And you get these weird replies, something like Marxism or something. I don't really think they know what they want. So you have, these are not protesters, these are anarchists, back in the Depression, fifth columnists, whatever the hell. These are people that are just out there to wreak havoc and incite public unrest. Okay? I mean, if you really want to protest, you organize, you petition politicians. There's ways of doing it not by throwing concrete at cars, not by burning things and looting, letting people loot stores. Okay. So you have these anarchists and this anti-King Day thing. Okay. People are against anything that Trump does. Why is that? That's because Trump and Musk have been exposing the level of graft, corruption, and that in this country as a whole. It is out of control. Now, corruption and all these other evil things have always existed in this government since day one, starting with George Washington. Okay? They were land managers or real estate people or something back during the expansionist days, and that's just the way it is. Okay? It's always been there. I don't think there's any government that runs without some level of corruption or, graft somewhere in there. Okay, so that would be unrealistic to eliminate all of it. But it's just that the level of it is so unbelievable that it's not funny. Okay? So you have these people, anarchists running loose, that just need any reason. And I believe a lot of these people, you look at them, to protest anything, even if you believe that. Okay? When you work for a living, okay, I don't have the time to take days off and travel to these cities or even travel to the state capitol, okay, and go there to voice my opinion on something. Okay, I have to pay my bills. Okay, I'm not independently wealthy, and I'm not receiving funding from something. Something tells me, and it's been proven, that there are people that pay these people to go there. It's organized, it's set up, and they're sent there. But somebody is funding them to go there. And I see a lot of young people, and everybody's got their camera filming everything and all this. And there are anarchists running loose and, just attacking. On the other hand, though, when I say there's not going to be a civil war, and one of the reasons is, there's a lot of people that don't like what's going on, but you're not going to find them organizing and forming a new government, okay, or, getting ready for a succession, because you can't do that without the support, the major support of very powerful people. So there's not going to be somebody trying to set up a government to overthrow this government and replace it with something else. That's not what's in play here. What's going on is people are just fed up. Okay, and what do you do? So, excuse me, I had to gather my thoughts for a second. Well, when we go back and look, Trump has changed a lot of the government law enforcement agencies, both with ICE. He's changed the way they do things. He's trying to secure the border as best he can, or actually has gotten the border somewhat secure. But there was a thing in the past where we discussed how they kind of weaponized all these federal agencies. Like the Internal Revenue Service was issuing weapons to its agents. ICE, the ATF, the FBI. And in the midst of this turmoil, these protesters and anarchists attack a federal agency that shows up in armored personnel carriers, by the way. Okay, and there was an incident where the ATF was going to raid this place and issue warrants, and it was about drug trafficking, weapons trafficking, and human trafficking. It had nothing to do with immigrations whatsoever. Okay, it was not part of that. And they showed the people had FBI and ATF on their uniforms, on their flak vests. Okay, it identified what agency it was. And they went to issue warrants in a criminal investigation, and then all these people come out screaming, ICE, go away, and throwing things at the federal law enforcement doing their job. Okay. And I guess they screwed up some sort of murder investigation in another city, that when they showed up and to do a raid, they intervened protests and were throwing things, and it wasn't ICE. Okay. So you have this active group of anarchists that attack the federal law enforcement agencies, and they're not smart enough to even know who they are or what they're doing. And so now our society is breaking down. This is kind of a civil war, okay? To where the ATF's going there to do a drug raid, and they're being attacked, called ICE, and people with signs, ICE go home, and they're throwing stuff at them and vandalizing the vehicles. I don't know. Maybe I'm old or something, but I always thought that was a crime, and you should be arrested for doing that, interfering with law enforcement. Okay? And these things are allowed by the way these, sanctuary cities, these governors saying, I'm not going to do anything, and they get the chief of police to come up and say, I'm not supporting what you're doing. Okay? That, in my opinion, that's illegal. You're not doing your sworn duty. Okay? If the FBI is coming in there to check on illegal activity, they should have their butts covered by the local law enforcement, and they should stop any of this. It's not a peaceful protest. When you're throwing stuff, blocking traffic, you're actually disrupting, blocking public roads and that, keeping people from getting to work and that. That is a criminal activity as far as I'm concerned. Alright? Now granted, I've seen peaceful protests where the people were there, they were chanting and carrying on, and they waited, and then they marched down the street and did everything. There were no broken windows, there was nobody throwing anything. The police were calm with them and just, kept them lined up, let them do their little thing, and away everybody went with no incident. Okay? That's a protest. Okay? Attacking law enforcement while they're, doing their jobs and being allowed to get away with this without no ramifications, that in itself is a crime. That is a failure of our, governments, a failure of the governors, the mayors, the police. Okay, and I believe they should be held accountable. So this is what I'm saying, is this is starting to escalate. It's somewhat of a civil war. Okay, and I believe they're allowing this to go to a point where things are going to become getting out of control. I've seen 2 or 3 videos today, which is something different that I haven't seen over the weekend, where people have run over protesters. Okay, after they said that down there in Florida and that, they're running them over. And see, this is going to escalate to where, and I forget where it was, Arizona or somewhere. No, Utah. They were there, and then they had some kind of security people, and some guy grabbed the rifle, and one of the security people shot him and accidentally shot and killed the guy standing next to him. This is kind of confusing why these protesters would bring an AR-15 to the protest. There's going to be an incident, and what it is they've let it go so far, and I believe this was the plan all along, is just to let things get so out of control that people will agree to a very restrictive solution. Okay? Because, you know, if I go to the grocery store today, I'd like to drive across through town without getting my windshield smashed and a bunch of people jumping all over my car. All right, just to go out to the store. All right, or to work. You know. And I think that's what they're waiting for. They're waiting for it to break down so bad that they're going to come down hard and put an end to this. All right, and then you're going to see all your rights gone, because they're going to let it just get to the point where it runs amok, and you know, basically that's what's happening. Our society is collapsing around us, and really, I don't know the solution. Okay, I think these people should be held accountable, fined, imprisoned on a massive scale. And already we're financially strained. The fact that just detaining these people for a week or something would cost another $1 trillion. Okay, but somehow this has to stop. It's starting to become to where something has to be done. Something drastic has to be done. Either arrest these people in whole and detain them, you know, for a period of time, kind of teach them a lesson, you know, or something. Because it's, you know, who knows? Well, that's my thought on this. And I said, look, every day passing and changing, it gets more confusing, and there's more strange things going on, and it's spreading across the country also. Fortunately, I live in a rural area. We don't have any of this going on near me. I don't know about the larger cities, but I haven't heard of any violence here in the state so far, you know. But then again, that can change any day. Well, that's my thoughts on it. I kind of don't like having to do videos like this, but it is an important thing, and I think all of us should go and speak out and at least get your thoughts and opinions on this, because, you know, our country is at stake. We are under attack from within. Okay, and then with what's going on globally, we may be sucked into World War III. Okay, on top of everything else. You know. So hit the like button, subscribe, and stay tuned.